that's what he wanted to do. The passion was there.
And like Mark said, I think Bernie was one of the premier inkers around. All you have to do is look at Neil Anderson and Green Lantern story that Bernie inked. There's simply no better inking job in the world than that. And he didn't toot his own horn. Bernie just did what Bernie did. It was a real privilege working with him almost every day and talking with him. And like Mark said, you wish you made better use of the time when he was around. But you know, you're working. But for example, everybody knows that Frankenstein play he did, the one with the laboratory and the monster and everything like that. I was talking to Bernie about that. Here's how dedicated he was. I said, well, how long did that take you to do, Bernie? It took him 4 months to do that one drawing. Think about that. 4 months and not one drop of white out on it. He wanted every line to be perfect, and that's what he was going to do. And that's just how good he was. But you know, if you saw him sitting in the studio, you wouldn't think that's a huge ego guy. He was just some guy sitting in the corner drawing away, very unassuming. You know, he was, can't say enough about her.
And the Frankenstein project itself was very interesting because that, I think, is indicative of how dedicated he was to doing things. Because you have to understand when he did that, which I believe nobody really knew. I started in the mid-'70s and ended by the end of the '70s when he got Marvel. But the point is, he did that on spec. He didn't get paid anything for it. He didn't do a Kickstarter. He didn't go for money. Well, he did that out of love for Frankenstein. He had a lifelong fascination with the book, with the character, and with the myth of Frankenstein. And he would make money on jobs so that he could take time to work on that book. He wasn't, without being repetitive, he wasn't being paid for it. He didn't have a publisher. He was doing it purely out of passion. So that, I think, is indicative of Bernie Rice. And what you've been seeing on the screen as we're all talking is various images, model sheets, drawings, and things that are in the book that he did for Gang of Seven. And one of the things that excited me about doing this book when Tom offered me the opportunity to do it, which was almost 2 years ago to the date, was that I'm aware of a lot of different people, you know, Alex Toth would be one, Gil Kane would be another, Mike Sikowski, and a number of artists of the Silver Age who did a lot of work for different animation studios, which you will never see. It's buried somewhere. You may see pieces of it come out occasionally, but never has a great comic book artist, illustrator, who worked in the animation field, never has the work of artists contemporaries, Bernie, been seen, made available. And there's an art to doing what we call Bigfoot, as opposed to doing illustration. That is to do cartoons. And to be able to do cartoons like this versus work which is as sophisticated as the work they did in the comic book shows the true flexibility and true talent of the artist. So that being said, has anybody in here got any questions for anybody on the panel? I hope so. Yes.
From my understanding, Dan, he spent 7 years altogether on the Frankenstein, and he said that was something that he always loved to get into. But how was it that he didn't choose? Was Frankenstein his favorite character? Something that he wanted to do like that? Why didn't he choose another horror monster like you said he loved all these monsters? Another thing I'd like to talk about, though, from my understanding, is when he passed away, he was in Austin, Texas. What brought him to Austin, Texas before he passed?
Well, I can't answer you.
I know something.
Okay.
He moved to Austin because that's where his wife was from, I believe, and there was family there, and they had a good medical facility. That's basically what, and it's cheaper. It was cheaper to live there. Bernie wasn't, among his many gifts, being terribly financially savvy wasn't one of them. And so, you know, he wanted to go somewhere that was cheaper and work there and live there. As far as Frankenstein, he was his favorite monster. That's what he told me. Because I asked him that question, who the hell would? You know, and he said, you know, he loved the Boris Karloff, Frankenstein growing up, because with all of us in that generation, that's what we watched on TV. In fact, there were some drawings up there. I don't know if you picked up on them. They look like Boris Karloff in The Invisible Ray, but a black cat. And that's because Bernie actually influenced what we were doing at the studio. Characters came up, and like I said, you let Bernie be Bernie, and we made a decision like, okay, well, sign this Dr. Katorki and the cat character, and designed like Boris Karloff, Bernie wanted. There was another drawing of one that looked like Peter Lorre, another monster, horror film person, and he would kind of do that. But Frankenstein was because, yeah, that was his favorite. And I asked him, did you ever want to do other ones? He said, no, not really, because he felt Frankenstein was a true monster creature, even with the personality kind of side. Whereas Dracula was just, he felt kind of boring. You know, he's like a sophisticated guy coming next. And, you know, the Mummy didn't really say much to him. He did a lot of that portfolio, that color of the creatures or whatever it was, but he kept coming.
He did a cover for me, Fortune of Dracula.
Yeah. But Frankenstein, you know, he put incredible dedication to that. And so that was the one, that was his definitive statement. He showed the designs he did for Creature from the Black Lagoon, when they were going to make that movie at Universal. And he was always doing things like that. You know, he would bring paintings in for toe tags, that comic book he was doing for George Romero, and he'd bring those in and show me what he was doing. But Bernie was one of those artists. He wasn't one that could do a million different things and did them all the time. Bernie was a focused guy. If he was working on something, he was working on something. And that's what he could do with Frankenstein. He'd break to do, I guess, comic book to keep alive, but he was just focused on doing the job at hand, and that's part of why he was so great.
Let me ask you this, Mark. Did you ever talk about Frankenstein with him? Did that ever come up in conversation? Mark, did you ever discuss Frankenstein? Did it ever come up in conversations?
Well, when we have the parties, when we go upstairs to his place, we see the Frankenstein drawings, the beginnings of some of it, and it was unbelievable. But we didn't really have conversations about it. Just, oh my God, this is incredible. When are you going to finish? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. You answered your question also, and now I'll get to everybody else. I'm sorry we're taking so long. And I'm timing it, so don't worry. We have enough time. He was very dissatisfied with the Classics Illustrated version of Frankenstein. I remember him talking about it and saying, this is not Frankenstein. And he was very unhappy with various versions of Frankenstein because he didn't feel that they were true to the spirit of the novel. He wanted to do something which captured the essence of the book so that it would be consistent with the book when you read it. And it was just quite an achievement when you think about it, for an artist to go out and be repetitive on his own for himself. This is practically unheard of. So it's one of the things that defined him. He did so many other things, but that's one of the things that defined him because it's so singularly dedicated to doing something as perfectly as humanly imaginable. Next question. We have one back there, sir.
I'll try to formulate it with a good question. Maybe for the guys that work with him. I know that Bernie shot his hand at one point, and I'm not sure whether that was the 80s or the 90s. He couldn't make any more after that, to no satisfaction. I wonder, in the workplace, how he was, his pencils are beautiful. I wonder how he was drawing or what. Was he trying to do inking by that point when he was working with you, or was he mostly working with pencil? How was that?
It was all pencil. He said he couldn't ink anymore.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get into particulars of an accident. I knew there was something to happen. But also, he blamed it on Frankenstein. He said that kind of did something. Gave him maybe some sort of carpal tunnel.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, something, because that was so intense. I mean, every line in that is perfect. And no whiteout of any kind. So every line was a focus and so, but no, he wasn't working in ink. It was all pencil.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm a surgeon, and one of the things that's amazed me about his work through the years is his amazing knowledge of anatomy and how accurate it is. Did he ever have any anatomical training that you know of?
Just I think studying art. No, he didn't go into the more.
Actually, I can answer that question. There was a famous artist school that everybody was part of the famous artist school. And he took the class for a year and commented, it's such a good class, nobody ever finishes it because you take a year of it. And they stressed, it was like Bridgman. Bridgman's a very famous artist who had a number of books on human anatomy that artists used. They didn't use Bridgman, they used the famous artist school. But they focused on anatomy and they focused on training you to do that very specifically. And as Bernie said, after you do the first year, So I think that could probably answer that. That was a very, very, very disciplined course, and he went through it. The other thing was, and I forget who it is, but there was this gentleman on television on Saturday mornings that he used to watch, who taught you how to draw.
John Z.
Right, Mike Kaluta also, it's weird, Mike Kaluta also watched him as well, and they used to reminisce about it. So he got part of his education, now he got part of his education through the famous artist school, but he didn't go to college and get a degree or anything like that, because that course was more or less equivalent to going to college.
Well, it's interesting to bring that up about the anatomy, because Bernie and I talked about it. If you look at Bernie's drawings, Bernie loved to draw hands. Probably the single hardest thing to draw well are hands. And he loved to do them. Another, Frank Frazetta, look at his paintings, look at his drawings. He hides them every way possible. If the fist will be just a club, or the feet will be in the grass, because Frazetta didn't really like to do that. But Bernie reveled in drawing hands. He loved it. He said he felt hands were as important to the personality of a character as the expression on your face. And that's why he always did that kind of thing. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any more questions? You, sir. Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on what you were talking about, the photo reference.
Right.
There were 2 apartments in the building on 79th Street. One of them was on the 8th floor. That was Wrightson, Kaluta, and Alan Weiss. And on the 6th floor was Jeff Jones and Louise Jones. So they would take the photo reference on the 8th floor, and Jeff Jones had a dark room downstairs in his apartment. They develop it, make prints, and that's how they did it. And the reason they started doing that is because Kaluta was good friends with Roy Krenkel. And Roy Krenkel, was friends with Williamson, Torres, and Frazetta. And all of them used photo reference in the 50s when they first started. So Krenkel suggested it to Kaluta, and that's how they started their operation of putting it together. And that's, I remember when they were doing the first issue on Swamp Thing, and, that's where they had it from, and that's why Louise Jones is on the cover of that. Ruby Simonson was on the cover.
We have time
Can everyone hear him?
We have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Just come up and.
I wonder, is there a biography of Mr. Weiss?
Well, there's no real biography. There's the book about that they came out with in 1979, which was about the group, which had all their art in it and everything like that. And that was Jeff Jones and Barry Windsor Smith and Michael Kaluta and Bernie. But I'm not aware of any straight biography.
Well, there was that book by Christopher Enterprise in the mid-70s called A Look Back. And it was pretty amazing when you think about it. Here Bernie was basically in the beginning years of his career, and he had enough quality stuff to do a book called A Look Back. And he was only 30-something at the time. But that has biographical information. It goes through his whole thing. And you can buy it. It's in paperback somewhere.
Let me just say in closing that this book actually is a full survey of his life. It includes a very in-depth biographical essay on his entire career with a lengthy interview with Tom in regards to what he did. And I'd also like to thank Mark for writing a beautiful afterword. And Mike Kaluta also wrote the foreword to this book. So this book very much covers many aspects of his career, but it focuses on his animation. But it is a complete survey of what he did, but it focuses on the animation. With that, I think we're just out about time. The only thing I would say is that to help out Liz Wrightson, if you're interested, we do have these plates. They were signed by a number of people, including Mark Hamill, to help out with costs that they had. And we do have a limited edition of the book, which is still available at our booth, which is 1821 and 1823. And I'd just like to thank everybody for coming to this panel, and I hope everyone really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.